Welcome, coaches. How are y'all doing this fine evening, or I should say afternoon? I am here. I'm excited. I'm here with the man, the myth, the legend, Coach Wade Phillips. Coach Phillips, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to all of us, and just thank you so much, man.
Sure, glad to. Yeah.
All right, I'm not gonna waste
Football is
any
what I'm
time.
about. Yeah.
If they don't know who you are, first off, shame on them. Okay, they cannot call themselves football fans if they don't know who you are. So I'm not even going to ask you those kind of questions. I want to get down to the nitty gritty. This is something once I was introduced to you and talked to you, I always wanted to know this. What does the preparation go for the Super Bowl? Like, does it change based on what you do from week to week? Is there something different? Like, I just want to know that.
Yeah. And I was in one earlier, but what I learned from it was the first time is going into it that you need to get everything done before you go. You know, put in all your stuff. So when you get there, because there's so much going on, even though you're practicing somewhere else, there's just so much hubbub in the Super Bowl that, you can lose concentration and focus. So you have to have everything done the week before you go. You make sure everything's in, you make sure everything's done, the game plan. So when they go there, you're just kind of repeating the things that you did before. I think that's one of the keys.
Okay, so how do you do that? Like, I know they're professionals, all of that stuff, but I'm trying to, as a high school, I go to the state championship game. How do I keep my guys focused? Well, do you have any keys that we can give that's like, hey, this is what you should do, and this is how you work your kids so that they stay focused even when all that hubbub's going about?
Yeah, first of all, I think you alert them to it. You say, hey, this is going to happen. So these things are going to happen. There's going to be a lot of things going on. It's going to they're going to try to get your focus away from what we need to get done. So prepare team ahead of time. So therefore, they're thinking about what you said. Hey, this is going to be hard to do this if we don't really concentrate. So I think the preparation part is just telling them what's going to be going on and how much is going to be going on. Now, if in the Super Bowl, we had a week before. Now, if you don't have a week in between, then you have to have your normal practices. You have to have your game plan you're ready that week, and now you're just implementing it. But I think more so you want to do it as much as you can on the field rather than in the classroom. Even though the classroom is enclosed, I think you want to do as much as you can on the field.
Okay,
if that makes sense.
That does. Now, what I'm trying to game plan from week. Do you do like a huge change for your game plan, or do you keep things like they were, like simple with just little tweaks? What's the thought process from a coach's standpoint in that?
Well, I mean, every team's different, so every game plan is going to be different. Unless you played them before. So yeah, I mean, the game planning night, whenever you have that, I mean, game planning days and so forth are the days that we have the players are off on Monday. So we do a lot of the first and second down game plan. Tuesdays also the players aren't there. So then we start with third downs, and then move into the week we start adding. And these are after practices. After you practice those things that you've already put in, then you go into 4-minute, 2-minute, red zone, those kind of things throughout the weeks. But that's your normal progression throughout the week during the year. So you stay as much normal as you can as far as teaching purposes for the players, because they're used to having it done that way.
Okay, I like that. Keeping things as simple as in a schedule as you have been the whole time, so you don't. I like that. All right, yeah. So coaches, hey, thank you so much for joining us. I'm here with the great Wade Phillips. If you have any questions, put them in chat. If I see them and that's pertaining to what we're talking about, I will go ahead and throw it in there and ask him. Talking about the Super Bowl, excluding the Super Bowl, what was like another huge game for you in your career? Because I've been an admirer. Like, I'm trying not to fanboy right now.
Gee, I mean, there's so many of them. I guess a lot of them you don't, where you don't get to the Super Bowl or big ones. When I started out with Houston Oilers way back, and we lost the AFC Championship to the Pittsburgh Steelers 2 years in a row. Of course, they won the Super Bowl those years. They won 4 out of 6 Super Bowls. We were in the same division with them, so it was tough there. We finally knocked them out of the playoffs my last year with the Oilers, but then we played Oakland in the playoffs, the Raiders then, and they won the Super Bowl. They beat us and won the Super Bowl. So we had a tough time there, but a lot of great memories from playing those great Steeler teams with Bradshaw and Franco Harris and the defense, the great defenses they had, and the great players. Joe Green. Joe Green still comes to Houston Oilers reunions. I mean, that's how amazing the closeness was. Even though we played them twice a year, and we actually split every year. We beat them at home, and they beat us in Pittsburgh. But then we ended up playing the championship games in Pittsburgh, and they won there. But it was a great rivalry, and it was a lot of fun. So, that's how I started out in the league. And then I went on to, New Orleans. I went on to Philadelphia, where I coached Reggie White. New Orleans, I coached Ricky Jackson. Then Philadelphia, I got to coach Reggie White, who held the record for 21 sacks, and Strahan broke it with 22. But he held the record, but he only played 12 games that year. So 21 sacks in 12 games.
That's decent. That's decent.
Nobody's gonna ever come close to that season. I mean, he was obviously a remarkable player and a great person. So, and we won the division there with Buddy Ryan as the head coach. First time that they had won it since Vermeil was there. So, we had some great games there and a lot of fun. Randall Cunningham was the quarterback. So that was pretty neat. And then I got to go to Denver with Dan Reeves, and they hadn't had a great year the year before, and we went to the Super Bowl the first year. So that was really neat. I got to coach. Actually, Steve Atwater, we drafted while I was there. He's going in the Hall of Fame now. A great player, obviously. A lot of fun coaching him, and I'm looking forward to his. Hopefully, they'll have the ceremony this year. I don't know, but anyway,
fingers crossed.
Yeah. So, I went to Buffalo. We led the league in defense there with Bruce Smith. So those pretty good years. I went back with Dan Reeves to Atlanta, and Michael Vick was the quarterback. And we actually we went to the playoffs and played in Green Bay. Beat Green Bay the first time that they'd ever lost a home game in the playoffs in the history of the Green Bay.
I remember that game.
Yeah, so that was pretty neat. I mean, that was pretty special. I went to San Diego. It was San Diego then, the Chargers, and they had the number 1 pick in the draft, so they had the worst team in football, and we won the division the first year, so that was pretty neat too. LT obviously was there, and they had a quarterback that we got rid of named Drew Brees. I don't know what happened to him, but
I don't think anything once they got rid of him. I think that was a great choice.
We had Phillip Rivers, who was pretty good, and so we won the division twice while I was there. Went to Dallas, and first time I was there, of course, Tony Romo was there as a quarterback, but first time I'd been with DeMarcus Ware, who is another Hall of Famer. And we were in the top of the league in defenses there too. So we just didn't quite get it done as far as the Super Bowl is concerned, but we had some good teams. And then I went to the Texans, and they were 31st in the league in defense when I went there, and we went to second the first year in total defense, which I'm pretty sure that's the biggest jump ever of any team, as far as defense is concerned, going from 31st to second. And we had a rookie named J.J. Watt, who wasn't a bad player there. He came along pretty well and helped us do that. So, and we won the division the first time they'd ever won the division, and won a playoff game 2 years in a row, which they still haven't won a playoff game there, but except those. But We had a good run there. I laid out a year, kind of like I'm doing now, and then we went to Denver in 2015. We had a pretty good team there. Yeah, we won the Super Bowl, so we gave up 15 points a game in the playoffs against Roethlisberger, Brady, and Cam Newton, the MVP of the league. We had 14 sacks in 3 games. We had one of the great defensive teams I've ever been around.
I completely agree with that.
We led the league in 15 categories on defense going into the playoffs. So that team was pretty special. And our offense, wasn't great. I mean, they actually led the league in turnovers, so our offense did, but we overcame it. Peyton was made a great comeback during the year and the playoffs, and that certainly helped us. But that defense was all time.
Yeah.
And then I was recently with the Rams. We won 35 games in 3 years. They hadn't had a winning season in 10 years. And we won the division. Obviously, we went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. We lost that game, but we played pretty good on defense. We actually helped Brady to 13 points, which, you were hoping that would win.
Yeah.
So I just had too many or so many great things happen to me, and being with a lot of great players has really helped. Well, Von Miller obviously was a key guy, along with DeMarcus and Talib and Chris Harris and those guys.
All right. So as a coach, how do you not get in the way of good players? Like I feel like that's something you have to learn, especially as a high school coach. Like we think we know it better, and it takes us a while to realize it's the players, not the coaches. What?
Yeah, I mean, if the coaching wasn't important, I wouldn't be in it. But I think it's important in a way, just like you said. Once you recognize the guy has talent, then you have to gear your teaching towards his talent rather than gear his talent towards your teaching. Because and for instance, I mean, if you've got a guy that's really quick, there's different ways to play techniques. Well, if you've got a guy I've had guys that are really quick. Well, I'm going to stunt that guy more to play his technique. He's playing the same gap responsibility as whatever defense I had called, but I'm going to stunt him to that rather than him line up in it or him play 2 gap or whatever. Now, if you've got a big, powerful guy, you may want to line him up in the gap and let him overpower him. That's what we did with Aaron Donald. I mean, we lined him up in a 3 technique, even though we were playing a 3-4 defense. We lined him up in a 3 technique because that's what he did well, and let him go, let him attack. A lot of 3-4 people would say, "Oh, we played 3-4 this way, and you can't. You need to line up and play a 2 gap." Well, that isn't what he played well. So I think that's part of our thinking, and we think we kind of get stuck in a box that this is a scheme, and every player has to play it the same way. It's just like a defensive back. If they're playing man-to-man, some of them play man-to-man great, bump and run. Other ones play better off, 7 yards deep and inside. So the first team guy might play it bump and run, but the second team guy needs to play it off and inside because he can't play it bump and run as well. It's still the same coverage. You're still covering man-to-man. We've got to take into consideration what the player does and what he does well. Now, anything they do well, if they're excellent pass rushers, it sounds simple, but you better rush them a lot. When I went to Dallas the year before, I went there. DeMarcus Ware didn't have a sack in the last 5 games, and I looked at the film. He wasn't rushing. They found out that if they split a guy out on his side, that he had to drop and the inside backer had to rush to take his place. Well, once we got there and said, "Hey, nobody's taking your place. Anytime we call Will rush, you're rushing." And so he had 20.5 sacks that year. And it's not because we're smarter than anything, but we also said, "Hey, this is what he does well, so let's let him keep doing it. And when we call it, let's make sure he's the one doing it." And you could flip sides with a great player too. Same thing. You say, "Hey, if he's a great rusher, you might want him to be the rusher on the right side if you call the right side rush, or the left side if the left side rush." I think those are things that I did in high school, and learn differently later on that, hey, it's what they can do. And it's not what we can think of. It's what they can do. And so let's get them whatever they do best, let's do it with them. And sometimes it means just being a smart player, you know. JJ Watt, we let him play. We not only let him go, we let him recognize the formation, and whatever formation was in, that was where his gap responsibility was. In other words, if it was an I formation, he would slant to the B gap. If it was a strong formation, he'd line up in the C gap. He could recognize formations, and we could get him in the spot we wanted him to get in by letting him, because he was smart, letting him be able to line up correctly or stunt to the correct spot. And the backer behind him would always just play off of him. He knew what the formation was too. So you can do a lot more with players, especially good players, than you think you can, especially when you don't put them in a position to say, hey, all our guys do this, so this is the way you ought to do it.
I like that. And what that means is you have to have a fluid type of system, defensive system. And we have some announcement on that. We'll come back to it in a minute to talk about your defensive system. I saw a good question in chat, and this is something I want to know. You're going up against a dynamic offensive player. Do you change things up to try to limit that, or do you just go, hey, this is what we do, and we're just going to do it to the best of our ability?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about a running back, it's different than an offensive lineman. But if it's an offensive lineman who's a dynamic player, we're gonna match our best player away from him. We're not going to challenge. It's not going to be we see which one's the best. It's our good guy's going to always rush against their weaker guy. Now we may get beat on that side, but we're going to beat them on the other side all the time. Just like a great wide receiver, a lot of times we'd put our best cover guy on the other receiver and put two guys on the one we wanted to stop. So we got two guys on their best receiver, and then we got one-on-one on their with our best guy. So now we got the receivers covered that way. So sometimes because people want to say, oh, well, our best guy needs to go against their best guy. I'd rather not be 50-50. I'd rather try to win, on my side as much as I can. So, and a great running back, what I always said, and our guys have always done, and it's not anything to do with football, except it's the mental part of it is we point out the guy that's a really good player. We point him out. We say, hey, there's so-and-so, he's there or he's over there. And what that does, the other team gets to thinking, hey, they're keying on him. They're keying. All we're doing is pointing him out. But after the game, they always said, oh, man, they were keying on him all the time. Well, yeah, we were aware of where he is all the time. That's for sure. I think it points out for your guys exactly who you want to stop, which does one thing, but it also says to the other team, hey, they kind of know where he is all the time.
You're playing that mind game with them.
Oh, yeah.
That's great. Again, coaches, thank you so much for joining. Coach, we have so many people in chat saying thank you for doing this. They're thrilled that you're here, and they're really excited to talk ball with you. I got a couple of technique questions, if you don't mind.
No, that's fine.
All right. One coach says, when teaching defense, is it better to plan to penetrate or to control the gap?
There you go. Now, see, that's what I say. If you've got a guy that's a penetrator, you want him penetrating because they're playing the same assignment. Their assignment is a gap, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Their assignment is a gap. Now, if you got a penetrator that penetrates the gap well, like an Aaron Donald, you don't want him to play just basic technique and read. You want him to attack. Now, if I got a different guy, and I've had some big, strong guys that weren't as quick as Aaron Donald, but could control the line of scrimmage, then they would play that read technique more so. So it's not the technique is really what the player can do. And that's what I'm trying to get over is what he's really good at, not what you can think of that everybody has to do it this way, because some guys need to penetrate, some guys don't. I've had guys that I told, hey, you grab the center, playing a nose guard, you grab the center, don't let him off from the backer. I've had other ones you stunt to the gap. I've had other ones you control that one side of the center because you're so powerful. So it's what the player we missed. I think we completely missed the boat on the players that way, because I see it the same, and I hear coaches talking all the time about, well, this is the technique we play. Well, technique maybe you can teach, you think you can teach, but it's not good for every player, and you're not utilizing their talent. And what I hope people have said about me throughout my career is he always uses their talent. Yeah, I think you heard that before.
Yes,
he's always utilizing their talent. Well, that's what talent is. It's the technique they play. Like I said, if it's bump and run, then he's playing bump and run all the time. If it's not bump and run, then he's playing something else. So utilize what they do best, and don't say, well, we're a penetrating team or we're only a read team. You can be both. You can teach the first team guy to do it one way, and the second team guy playing behind him, if he goes in, plays it a different way. They're still playing the same responsibility. They're still playing the same gap. They're still covering the same man-to-man, or still playing zone the same way. But they're different people.
Okay, so that's a great take. And a lot of coaches are like, you're blowing their mind right now. As a coach, when do I determine that? Is it during the spring for like spring ball? Is it in the install, the fall, or is it throughout the course of the season? Like, what's a good time that I should start doing that?
Well, every time I've gone in new, I've just looked at the tape or the film from the year before and tried to get a feel that way. Now, once you get on the field with them, you see how they play and how they played before. Basically, they come back to what they've been doing. You always want to be attacking defense as much as you can. I mean, I think that's a natural. Defensive players are naturally aggressive. You'd rather be a more penetrating, attacking type philosophy-wise, but not all players are like that. So I always took we're gonna penetrate more. We're gonna do those kind of things because it helps you rush the passer. Number one, in our league, you got to be able to rush the passer. If you're sitting on the line of scrimmage all the time, you're not going to get as many hits or pressures on the quarterback or sacks on the quarterback. So that's why I've always liked an attacking style to start with. But if the guy doesn't do it well, then you make sure what he does well, you cater to. Basically, you cater to the player, not man. This is the way we play it, because I'm not out there playing because I'd get killed if I was out there playing. So
nonsense. You would kill the quarterback in the other defense, man.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. So one big thing that I've noticed is you're kind of like one of those coaches that go to a bad team and you change things around. Like they're, for instance, 30th, and then they go to the first or second. Like, what do you think the main quality is that you go in that you bring that they didn't have before you got there?
Yeah, I think we've got some. I don't know if it's a record or not, but 7 times I've gone in a row as a defensive coordinator. We went to the playoffs the first year. So the big thing is teaching progression. I think how you teach it, how you get it taught, how quickly you get it taught. They say players, if they don't have to think, they play faster. It's really not true. What the true statement is, if they know what to do, they play faster. So you have to get them where they know what to do, where there's no doubt in their mind as to what they do. And so, and it's a fast game, and things change because of motions and shifts and all those things. So your job as the teacher is to get them to know what to do before the ball snap, and then that way they'll be able to do it faster and better. So that's part of your teaching progression. If they're not doing it, then you better check yourself. I've always said, hey, we have as coaches, we have the test. We have a test. Okay. The test is, all right, our defense, what we call everything, what you do in that defense, what technique you play, all those things. That's the test part. And we have all the answers for them, though. We have the answer to everything the guy needs to do. So why can't he do it? Well, for some reason, we didn't get the answers over to him. Because I know if I have a test and have all the answers, I'm going to make 100.
Yeah.
So you better get that over to him. You better get him to be 100%. We say no, zero mental mistakes. We accept zero mental mistakes. But if they're making mistakes, you better look right at yourself. And I'm talking about the coach, because you're not getting it over to him. He's not making mistakes on purpose. He's not doing it wrong on purpose. You can holler at him all you want to and think you're a coach, but you're not a coach until you get him to do it correctly. So let's make sure that we know the player, how he does it, and what you expect, and he knows it. And that's the key thing. He knows what to do.
All right, and again, we're going to talk about this right now. I think that's based on your system, and you have a system. It's the numbers defense. Could you tell us what that's about?
Well, the numbers involves quite a few things. The front, people know somewhat about the numbering system up front, where 2 technique, 3 technique, those kind of things. I don't think they know all about it. My dad invented that, so I've always been around that. That numbering system, and then also the numbers as far as how many you have in the box. When the offense comes out, and then what the offense is, what personnel group they're in. They're in 11, 12, 21. Maybe you've heard of that, maybe you haven't. But how you set up your game plan is what kind of personnel the offense has and what they can run, and those are also numbers. So the numbers defense overall. You can line up. You can have any kind of alignment, any front you want by using the numbers. You also have the secondary. The coverages are numbered, so you're using numbers all the time. But you have to know what those numbers mean and what you can do with them, and then what number basically the offense has, what personnel number they have, and that all goes together in putting a game plan, putting a team on the field that can play multiple defenses. Or you can play one defense all the time, but if that's your preference. But with the numbers, you can play any defense and any coverage you want, and you can also adjust it against any personnel group or offensive group.
All right, and you've come out with a course about that. And coaches, if you look in the description, there's the link to the course. There's also a coupon code for you for the first 20 people. It is in the description down below. We have a couple of questions based on coverages. They want to know, what is your favorite coverage?
My favorite coverage is the one that my players can do the best. We led the NFL when I was with the Saints in a dome stadium, which there's no wind or rain or anything like that. So it's harder to play pass defense in a dome stadium and stat-wise, because all the teams come in. And there's no in the winter months. The teams that move up in the stats on defense are the northern teams, because the weather's so bad. So you have to look at that. But anyway, we led the league in pass defense in a dome stadium with the Saints, and we played all zone. We led the NFL in defense with the Broncos, with the Super Bowl champ Broncos. We led it by a long ways, and we were playing an outdoor stadium, but we played a combination man and match zone. People thought we were playing man-to-man all the time, but we played what we call a matchup zone, kind of like basketball matches up in their zones. That's what we do in ours. So that match zone concept, we've always kind of utilized that as our base, and then see if you can play man-to-man all the time. They're not going to, and you're good at it, they're not going to have as many completions. They're not going to make as many yards. You're not going to get as many interceptions playing man-to-man, but you're going to shut them down basically pass defense-wise. So you'd like to be playing a good percentage of man if you can, but you can still play match zone and play really well. So I've always based out of a kind of a match zone, play some man and play some spot zone.
I love, from a defensive perspective, I love match zone, because like you said, I've also coached basketball. The matchup zone in basketball, it confuses people because you think it's man-to-man. Same thing with
Yeah,
football. They think it's man to man, and then all of a sudden you're like, haha, I gotcha. It's straight up zone.
yeah, that's,
So what? Okay,
yeah,
what's
yeah.
what's a good coaching point if I'm going to go and do matchup zone defense? Like, what's one thing I should know before going into it?
Uh, well, I mean, the thing you thing you need to know is, hey, we can't match up with a man to man all the time. You know, we can't. Uh, they're going to have some guys that can beat us man to man, but what our advantage is, we can pass those guys off to other guys, especially on crossing routes and those kind of things, where we can't run with them all the way. We don't have the speed in certain positions, or they have a really good back that you can't cover. Those kind of things with a linebacker. Uh, so. Uh, it's really concept. I think it's teaching concept of the match zone principles, which are uh, be able to see the guys that you're going to match up. Basically, you're matching up with the three inside receivers. Okay, whether you're playing a 4-3, 3-4, doesn't matter. You got three inside people, maybe a strong safety and two linebackers that may be different people, but they're matching up the three inside receivers. Okay, and if any crossing and so forth, you pass off to each other. And any one of them that goes to the flat, you still match up with him, which is different than probably a lot of the match zone people do. But if the number two strong and the number two weak goes to the flat, we just match up with him. We go to the flat with him and say, hey, we're playing the flat zone with that guy. So match up the three inside guys. Now you can match with your corners basically on the outside guys with safeties over the top or play quarters. It doesn't matter what you're playing there, but you can match those guys too. And you can still pass off those guys if you need to. If they're in close, then where they would become number two, then you match those things. So it's the process of making sure those guys know how to switch players basically. And if all of them are on one side, just like basketball, if all of them are on one side, all our guys are going to that side. In other words, the two strong, three, and two weak all go to the weak side, then all of us go to the weak side. We're all zoning up our guy. But you're on top of the guy, you're in the area where the guy is, but you see the quarterback. See, that's the difference in man to man. Man to man, you're on your guy. You don't really see the quarterback. Match zone, you're just matched up with your guy, and therefore you get more tips, interceptions, and those kind of things.
Okay. That's awesome. I like that. And you're right. That's when in basketball, I love how you keep tied it in with basketball. Just as an old basketball coach, I
There you go.
appreciate the analogies. Um, I have a question about game planning. I know offensively, there's some coaches that they have that big old sheet, and they're looking at the squares and they match up what down and distance it is, and this is what I'm going to call. You also have some coaches that are just in the flow of the game and kind of get like, okay, I'm going to call this because that's open. Where do you fall on that as a defensive coordinator? Are you more like situational? Okay, it's this situation. I'm going to call this play. Or are you in the game and be like, okay, I think they're going to do this, so I'm going to call this play?
Yeah, I'm going to go into the game and try not to get off the game plan at all. What we set up is, we expect them to do, for instance, certain personnel, and 11 personnel, we expect them to run these running plays, these pass plays on these down and distances. Okay. And say second and, 1 to 5, we expect them to run the ball, 75% and a few play action passes. So we're setting up the defenses for that. And so they normally go by that. You have a few teams that don't, and that's when you have to adjust. I call it adjustment. I don't call it just get the feel of the game. You just adjust. Well, now they're doing more what they did on second and 6 to 8 or 6 to 9 rather than 1 to 5. I don't think you just say, okay, I'm gonna get in the flow of the game, and I know what they're going to do, and so I'm going to call the right call all the time. It's really the stuff you set up, and they may have adjusted it a little bit, but I think you make the same adjustment, you're in good shape. But you want to play because a lot of times it's the first time you play something in the game. In other words, first time they get in the red zone, first and 10 in the red zone. Well, I don't want to just call something. I want to call what I planned to call against that personnel group on the 12-yard line on first down, on the 8-yard line on second down, on the 5-yard line on third down. I want to make those calls that we determined as a staff, and that's why we stayed up all night, rather than drinking beer and telling stories. We're working on those things. So that's what we worked on. That's what we put in the hard work to say, these are the best things that we expect to have. So let's run those. Now, again, if you get way ahead or way behind, those things change. You get way ahead, then the first down things go out. They got to throw the ball to catch up. But you utilize if they're way behind, you utilize your third down calls on first down. So those kind of things. So I'm really more, hey, I'm going to stick with the game plan and call the things because I think I owe it to myself and all the coaches, the defensive coaches, to say, hey, I'm going to call the things that we planned, that we thought were the best, and stick with those. And then if we have to adjust, we will.
Okay. Now, sticking with the game plan, what do you look for at halftime? Like, what is your philosophy at halftime to make, like you said, the adjustments or to stay on script? Like, what kind of conversations are you having with all the other coaches?
Yeah, I mean, that's why you have the numbers for the offensive personnel groups. You say, all right, 12 personnel, they're doing this against us. We didn't expect that. We did expect that. They're throwing it a lot in play action out of 12 personnel more than we thought. So now the second half, we're gonna play more. We play our sub defense, our dime defense against 12 personnel, maybe, because they're throwing the ball a lot out of 12 personnel. We expected a big running game, or they can't move the ball in 12 personnel. And what we're doing, they can't run the ball. So we'll be more aggressive on first down than we were, expecting them to throw the ball, putting more pressure on them. Those kind of things what we talk about.
Okay. And you said the numbers, so we're going to swing back to that. The numbers defense, your course, which is really, 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 really good. I freaking loved it. But one of the things that I thought was excellent was your how-to section. Like, you have a whole section devoted to how to stop the wing tee, how to stop the flex bone. What other sections do you have in there, Coach, so you can tell the other coaches that are in here?
Yeah, I'd stop the duo, RPOs, all those things that, and you don't, the other side of the ball is good too, but the ideas, I think, and the certain concepts that you need against certain things will help you. So those things we put in there to say, hey, this is how we basically attack the offense, because we've gone through all kinds of things defensively. I go all the way back to wishbone. I mean, we played against the wishbone, and it took a while, and then the run and shoot, and then now we got jet motion and stuff. So it's always evolving. And the name of defense is recognition. Once you can recognize the plays, what plays they can run from those, whether it's motions or whether the way they lined up in a wing tee, whether those things. Once you get the players to recognize what plays they can run from those things, helps you be able to stop them.
And that's what I like. You go through each one, you recognize, you're walking coaches through it, how to attack. And I feel as if defensive coaches, they're getting more to react instead of attack. At least the coaches that I talk to, they always want to do the read and react. And you're like, no, you got it wrong. You've got to attack. And this is how you attack it. And you lay that out in your course, which is right. High five, man. High five. Yeah. Hey, you saw it, coaches. I got a high five from Wade Phillips and a fist bump. Look at that. History in the making right here.
There you go.
Another cool thing about your course is that for coaches that go through it, they have access to you and your team to answer any questions. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they don't, and what I've always really upsets me a little bit is, there's no college courses. You don't go to college and say, we had one little course when I was at the University of Houston, and the professor was about a section on football, and he said, Wade, if you'll do this 6 weeks, I'll give you an A in the course if you'll just teach this part, because nobody was teaching anything about football, how to be a football coach, how to coach defense. That all I got was, what I played, and then, of course, being around my dad, that helped me, but no football. But you don't even have to play football. You don't have to be a football player to be a great football coach, But we've limited it that way, and that, if you didn't play, then you don't have anything. You don't have any course to take to say, well, this is how you play defense, and this is what the numbers are. This is what everything means, and this is how you play it. So I think every college ought to have a course like this, and so we're just kind of putting it out for coaches that are already coaching. But I think anybody that's in college that wants to be a coach or wants to know more about it, especially our defensive stuff that we're putting on here, can learn a lot and be on their way to being a coach. Sid Gilman, one of the great coaches of all time, Hall of Fame, right? Never played football.
Yeah,
he never played football. We had the opportunity then, I guess, but now it's almost limited to guys that played, and that isn't right either. I mean, you can love football, not you can not be big enough or fast enough or whatever. I mean, I couldn't play pro football. I wouldn't, but I've coached pro football
very well.
years,
I may add,
and done all right. So, but I had some background that helped me, and I think this is the background that you need.
I completely agree. And coaches, it's in the description. I put it in chat. And the first 20 coaches that get this, there's a code right there. It's code 100 numbers, 100 with the number. That only goes to the first 20 people that get the course. We have some other questions. I know you're a busy man, so if you have to go, I totally understand.
Also, I want to say on this thing, it's tested. You get a test.
Yep.
It's not just telling you. It's not just a video on, hey, you have to pass the test, and the test is you don't just get a passing grade. You have to have 93% to pass the course. This is not just D and you pass the course. It's you got to make an A, and that's what I said before. You got to know what to do. You got to know how to do it and how to teach it. And you have to know how to teach it to the players. So we made it tough in that you have to make an A to pass the course. I think that's the way it ought to be.
I completely agree.
To be good at something, you want to be an A guy. You don't want to be a guy that barely passes.
The only D here is for defense. You don't get to pass with a D.
There you go.
The numbers. There we go.
That's right. That's right.
All right. A question.
Yeah.
Talking about red zone philosophy, does your philosophy change when you get into the red zone as it does for the rest of the field, or are you the same throughout the entire, drive or field or whatever?
Yeah. Well, we set our coverages. We play the same coverages differently. It just makes sense. We play the same coverages we play on the field, but we play them differently. In other words, you're going to play man-to-man down there. You don't need a free safety, okay? So man-to-man with a free safety, we'll double somebody with that free safety, because you don't have the deep threat. Once you get in the red zone, you can't get beat deep, basically. You can get beat on a fade route, I understand that. But I'm talking about, you don't need an overlap safety. So he's gone. Once you get inside the red zone, there's no use trying to overlap because you can't overlap because they got to throw it quicker, okay? So the man-to-man stuff, always utilize your free safety into helping somewhere else. Normally helping against their best receiver, or if they got a guy that runs the fade, you play outside with your corner there, so he can't run the fade, and you got the safety coming over, and so you're doubling him. So you got their best receiver who runs a fade route or is taller in your corner or whatever. You got him doubled. So utilize your free safety in your man-to-man stuff. And the same thing with zones. We're going to play zone, but we're not going to play as deep. We don't. We on the 12-yard line, we're not going to play 12 yards deep. We line up 12 yards deep. We're not going to drop. So we're lining up closer. We're playing our zones. We're just shortening their zones, which makes sense. Obviously, they can't throw it over the top of you. So, but we want to play the same coverages. I still want to play the coverages that I believe in, whatever they are. If it's matchup zone, if it's man to man, if it's even spot zone, so, but you condense them, because I don't like to say, okay, now we're getting the red zone. Now we're going to call all different coverages. It's still part of what we do by saying, hey, this is cover one, but we're going to adjust it by taking the free safety out of it. So that's the way we do it.
Okay. All right. Another question is, what type of players are you looking to put in positions? Like, are you saying, okay, you're the biggest guy, you're going to be my nose guard. You're the fastest guy, you're going to be my outside linebacker. Or do you have that? Or are you just like, what's your thought process on players going in positions?
Yeah, I mean, they almost put themselves in position in that, I mean, a real big guy is going to be a defensive lineman, not necessarily a nose guard. People think a nose guard has to be the biggest guy, and that's really not the case. With the Cowboys and with Denver, the first time I was there, we had actually smaller nose guards and played great defense with those guys because they were quicker and we utilized their quickness. People think you just put a slug at nose guard and that's what you do, and that's not really the case. If you got a good player that can cause havoc, it's not a bad place to put him because he's right in the middle. We can go either way. But it just depends on their abilities. I mean, in a 3-4, you want outside rush guys to obviously play the Sam and a Will. And 4-3, you want your defensive end type guys to be better rushers than your inside guys. I think they fit into pretty much what they play most of the time. I've played a few guys out of what had Mario Williams. I don't know if you remember Mario Williams, but he was a defensive lineman. That when we got J.J. Watt, we actually moved him outside, and he had 6 sacks the first 6 games. He got hurt after that, but he was about 6'5" and about 280, playing outside backer. But he could do it, so that's what we let him do. In a 3-4, you want your rushers as outside backers, that's for sure. And your D line wise, it's you really want your better D lineman at either defensive end or 3 technique like we played Aaron Donald. I mean, because they can rush the passer easier. They're not going to get double teamed as much, from those positions.
Okay. Now we have a couple of questions for the course. One, coach is asking, if you stumble up and you get an 89 on the exam, are you allowed to retake it again, or is that just like you're done?
Yeah. Oh no, we're gonna make you get it right. No, I mean, you need to learn it, and sometimes you miss things. It also teaches you to take notes, to be able to take exams. I mean, we've done it in college. I mean, it's the same kind of course. You get another opportunity though if you don't do well. So I think you learn a lot from it, but you learn even more if you look at it again.
I completely agree. Another one is, will there be a playbook?
Well, it shows you how to do the playbook, basically.
Okay.
That's part of the preparation. It's showing you, and sometimes we limit ourselves coaching wise. I say we limit ourselves because we say, well, I played this defense and that's the only defense. But, there's a lot of different defenses, and you can come up with things yourself that you think are good. I mean, like I said, we played a 27 defense when I was in high school and college. And then we went to 3-4 defense when I was coaching in pro football. So there's a lot of good defenses, but you just need to learn how to teach them.
Okay. All right. And again, coaches, in the description is the course, the link to the course. Also in chat, there is the link to the course as well. I'm just looking through there. A coach wanted to ask multiple defenses. Do you scheme multiple defenses a week, or you just base defense and tweak it?
Well, it depends on what you want to do, and multiple defenses you can play. That's what the numbers do for you. You can play multiple defenses, and you play multiple coverages. It's what the players can do. If you have a pretty smart group, you can play more stuff. If you don't have a smart group, overall, you don't want to make mistakes. Mistakes get you beat. Everybody knows that. So you don't want to. We have no mental mistakes, right? That's what we said in the first place. We don't want any mental mistakes. So it's just your teaching progression and make sure they know what to do, and then you can play many defenses you think of, as long as they can play them without making mistakes. And that's their teaching progression, which you can do a lot fast. Just like I said, when we went from 31st to second with the Texans, that year we had a work stoppage in the off season, so we didn't even have an off. We didn't have the OTAs. We came in new as a staff at the start of the year. So what it tells you is not that I'm a great coach, but our teaching progression was damn good because we got a new defense. They were playing a 4-3. We went to a 3-4. We went from really bad to really good, and won a lot of games. We won the division too. So we won a lot of games. We had good players, don't get me wrong, but we taught it quick enough that we didn't make mistakes, And so I think that's the key is being able to teach what you get taught, and we talked about that, and how quickly you put them in depends on the players. How quickly you put in the coverages, how quickly you put in the fronts, because you can call multiple defenses from this, but will the players get it? As long as they get it, you can keep progressing. You can play, you can go to 10 different defenses calls instead of 3, pretty quickly. As long as players aren't making mistakes, and hustling to the football.
I completely agree. All right, Coach, I know you're a busy man. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah,
Coaches,
that's great.
Again, the course is in the description. It is in chat. If you're watching the replay of this, it'll be the very first pinned comment. Coach, thank you for doing this. Can I get another high five just to say that I got a high five, a virtual high five from Wade Phillips? I appreciate you being here. And coaches.
Yeah, great job, man. Great job.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you. Is there anything you want to say before we sign off?
No, I just like I say, I just think it's going to help a lot of people. And I did a lot of Zoom chats and that kind of thing, but it's just hard to put it all in there, But I think we did a pretty good job putting a lot of it in there where people are going to help yourself be a better coach or help yourself be a coach.
Okay. Well, Coach, thank you so much, man. I appreciate this.
Yeah. Okay, good.